Welcome to another aXpire update, this time for week 45 of 2019. We've had yet another productive week at aXpire, getting closer to closing our first digital shares client and also to the release of Biller, which has its launch before our other products such as Paybox. As for MatchBX, we've decided to change our direction. Due to reasons such as heavy competition and a saturated market, we're choosing to postpone the launch of the new MatchBX platform indefinitely. We'll still have the tech and the platform available for use when we want to utilize it for escrow transactions of aXpire, but we're choosing not to go ahead with its launch. We think the freelance market is very bloated, and although there is a need for change in moving these different platforms over to a decentralized crowd jury system, as we were doing with Claros, we don't think we're the ones to herald this change. Launching MatchBX and scaling into a successful position would simply divert too much focus from Resolver, Biller, Digital Shares, and most importantly, Paybox, given the similar retail demographics. We think that operating a successful freelance platform can be much like a whole project in and of itself, and this will not create revenues to sustain the aXpire ecosystem nor the core aXpire business. Our hope is that this doesn't come as a large disappointment. The reality of the situation is that our focus is now much clearer, both from an outside perspective and from an inside perspective. We have our competency areas, notably within payments, and that's where we're focusing on full. To end off the MatchBX announcement, I also want to touch on the burn aspect of MatchBX. Our refocus is not going to cut down the amount of burn in total, as again, scaling MatchBX to a position where it burns in larger quantities would divert focus from our other products, which burn in higher quantities per side contract. We think focusing on our other products will lead to more revenues, which means more burns essentially. In other news from this week at aXpire, we were honored with a key to Miami-Dade County, the most prosperous county of Miami, by the mayor himself. Next day, the mayor tweeted out 4 images of the event, one including Gary and Matt, aXpire CEO and COO, receiving the key. We're extremely proud of the award, and it'll just help further solidify that the strategic headquarters move to Miami was a good one. That's all for the project side of this week's update. Next, we have This Week in Crypto, bringing a collection of news and happenings from this past week to your attention, as well as giving you our brief opinion on them. This week, a swindler was arrested for impersonating one of the founders of Riot Games, the creator and operator of the popular game League of Legends. The swindler, a Singaporean national, impersonated the co-founder in order to buy cloud credits from AWS or Amazon Web Services, using the co-founder's American Express credit card. He then used AWS computing power to mine cryptocurrencies, using so much that the cloud credit bills amounted to $5 million. At one point, the swindler apparently became one of AWS's largest customers of computing power, as outlined in the following quote from the prosecution of the case. Quote, "In the few months his scheme remained active, Ho consumed more than $5 million in unpaid cloud computing services with his mining operation and, for a brief period, was on Amazon Web Services, AWS's largest customers of data usage by volume. Some of the bills were paid by the California game developer, as in Riot Games, financial staff before the fraud was detected." In addition to this, the swindler, Matthew Ho, apparently also managed to trick Amazon into believing that he was, in fact, the president of Riot Games, in part by using a fake Californian driver's license that he created to impersonate, again, the co-founder of Riot. I'll end off this story by quoting Cointelegraph's coverage. They reported, quote, "Although the Department of Justice charged Ho in early October, the identity of Los Angeles-based game developer came public only now. Ho is currently being charged with 8 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of access device fraud, and 2 counts of aggravated identity theft." We have little other to say than, wow, how in the world was this able to happen, and how didn't a $5 million expenditure set off any alarm bells? There's just one thing to really take from it, and that is the innovative nature of swindlers. It's important to use hardware wallets and basic operational security when holding cryptocurrencies, blocking any swindler or scammer from taking your hard-earned money. Obviously, this specific event could not have been helped by a ledger, but the point still stands. In other news, a draft document from the European Union mentions the possibility of the Union looking at their own digital currency, or the Eurocoin. The document also reportedly mentions that members of the Union should develop a common approach to digital currencies, banning risky projects. The meaning of this is that it could look like the EU would want to create their own digital currency in the future, but would adopt a negative view towards cryptocurrencies as a whole, with a regulatory agenda against them. One way we could see this happening right now is with Libra. The EU, and some member nations more than others, have positioned themselves as looking to block the launch of Libra in Europe. We're not very big fans of Libra, but it would seem hypocritical to block Libra due to the imagined risks of destabilizing the economy, only to usher in a digital currency of their own. We think the right move is not to take a negative view on cryptocurrencies. If the EU, US, and other areas do that, then they risk falling behind. Recent statements by Chinese leader Xi Jinping and other world leaders such as President Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, highlight large investments in blockchain technology and digital currencies by their respective countries. China in specific could look to become a blockchain giant due to the abundance of talent and capital in their country, as well as through being a leading economy on the world stage. We should all look to adopt revolutionary technology rather than shun it, letting it be used to the benefit of others whilst we consider it contraband. Blockchain can be beneficial for all sorts of countries, organizations, and individuals. It's time that governments realize that. Thankfully, there will always be pioneers like Malta and Estonia, but the US and the whole of the EU as a collective really needs to start catching up. That's all for this week's update. I hope to see you again next week. Thank you.